architectural class, so I'm going to be very lenient on your geometry and things that you do. We'll cover all that when we go through drafting 156. For this, the purpose of the drawing is really how you manage a sheet and display geometry. Now, this is a real common practice in the architectural field, and besides, everybody says they want to do architectural at some point, so it's kind of nice to get this into this semester at least once, instead of this mechanical widgets things we've been doing all along. Now, the thing that's kind of nice about this, and what you're going to see is we're going to use a process called XREFing. It is very similar to the process of linking. If any of you have worked in Word or Excel where you link documents back and forth so that you don't have to have them open but they use information out of it, that's exactly what this is. Okay? So if you've dealt with Word programs and the link function in there, it's the same thing. It's called external references here, or for short, XREFs. In essence, when you look at this, it's got some unique things about it. Number one is that there are 3 scales on this sheet. That's a pretty complicated thing for us to do, especially if you don't have viewports. Second thing is, when we're coming through here, these are all created in different fashions. Now, this one right here is the only geometry I have in this drawing. That's it. But I'm displaying geometry from other drawings. Okay, this one, you're given in its entirety. You don't have to do anything in it other than say, you know what, this is appropriate for this structure. I'm going to reach into my block library and grab this and display it. And I don't have to draw it, right? The beauty of CAD is that the repetition of like events is really where we make or have the use of CAD, right? Is the repetition of these items. This one is also the same way. It's coming out of a block library, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to compare and contrast the 2 way XREFs are done. And they have different end results is the reason there's 2 ways that they're done. Now, all this is backed up in the XREF chapter. I do not need you to go to that chapter and go through everything, unless you're ahead and you don't have anything to do. Go through it, because it is a very useful skill. In fact, it's a required skill. We're going to hit it again, but for now, I'll give you all the information as part of lecture. One thing I do need to know as part of this talk, are we testing Tuesday or Wednesday?
We're not going skiing.
We can test Wednesday if you want.
Okay, I would like to test Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay, that way we test it. We'll go back over this. We'll go through XREFing and all that again on Monday. We'll just get you folks set up so you can get work running on it today if you happen to be there. We'll do a test review Tuesday, test Wednesday. That'll be last formal day of class. All right, so keep in mind, this is the only thing you're drawing here. You will draw this one, but separately in a separate drawing. This guy, you aren't going to draw it at all. You're not even going to touch it other than just say, I'm printing it. Okay? So when you look at all that line work and you think, how am I going to finish this by Wednesday? It's not that bad. Okay. All right, so let's look at the files I gave you. Let me close out of this guy. If you would, open the 135-6 template. Okay, the file you downloaded called 135-6 template. All right, whenever you're using somebody else's drawing, you ought to spend a few minutes going through it. Now, what we want this to do is be set up in an architectural sense. So I want to go through it with you first and how I would scope a drawing out and make sure that it's got all my stuff in it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're using somebody else's drawing and you print something out of it, whose name's in the title block? Yours. And so you better be making sure that your line weights are right, that you aren't displaying information that is incorrect, because really your reputation's online. Good thing about drafting, they can't sue you, okay, because you are protected on that. If you are an engineer or architect and you stamped it, they can sue you, okay, but drafters don't get sued. Okay, we are kind of protected in that instance. All right, now, so to check it, first thing I would do, look at your layers. Okay, so let's open our layer property dialog box and see how those are set up.
Fern?
21.
Now you'll want to go through here and kind of look at it in detail, but you'll notice that the line types are kind of already set for you. Okay. You do have some new layers besides your template that are in here. Okay, the first one, you have a doors and window layer. If you look at that, it's set to print as a thin line continuous. What do you think goes on that layer?
Doors and windows.
Very good. Okay, that's where you're going to put those. Now, the reason we generally have a layer strictly for those is that we toggle those on and off all the time. Okay, they're kind of a pain in the rear when you're trying to mess with stuff, especially the doors. You have a furniture layer. Okay. That one, notice it's continuous, 0.012, a thin line. What goes on this? Everything that needs to be a thin line. This will be your cabinets, this will be your range, your refrigerator, your toilets, anything that's not a doors and window that needs to be a thin line goes on this layer. You also have a walls layer. That's different also. How's that one set up?
And the OBJ.
OBJ, it's set up as 024. It's called walls because mostly in architectural, the only thing that's an object line is wall edges, most of the time. But anytime you need an object line, the walls layer is what you're using. Okay? So there's your layers. Let's jump into our textiles and see what we have set up. Okay, so ST enter. So click into them. Arch 1 is 1/8 inch. Using the artstyle.shx. Arch 2 is 1/4 inch. This is your title text, right? Right? And then you have Arch 3, which is set up for 3/16. This is your room title text. It's the only place you'll use it is room titles. So I've got Arch 1, which is going to be my general text throughout the drawing. Arch 2 is going to be on your title. So you had this one separate. Notice at the bottom, it's got typical wall section. That's your title text, Arch 2. Okay. Now, why is this separate? Because the copier won the battle this morning. It should have been in the packet. It spit it out and didn't copy it, so I had to do it individually. But it's part of that whole packet. Okay. Arch 3 is your room text. And where you're going to use that is on the floor plan only. So if you turn to that floor plan in your packet, you'll see these different rooms, like the dining room, the living room, the kitchen. That's all Arch 3, or 3/16 high text. Okay? So it's a title, but not a title. That's why it's right in the middle. And that's the only place you'll really use that text.
Why is 40 or bigger?
What's that?
Why is 40 or bigger?
Because this was a ISU drawing.
Because-
It's just a mistake. All right, so Arch 3 text here. Arch 2 text for titles like this. Arch 1 text all through the drawing. Okay. All right, let's go back to the computer. That's all set up for you. Let's go to dim styles. Let's see what's set up there. Okay, you only have the standard dimension style. Let's set one up for the architectural system. Okay, so if you would go into dim style. We're going to create a new text style. And let's just call it Arch 1. Might as well click dim anno while you're on this first one. So Arch 1, make sure your annotation button is set. We're going to set this up to the AIA, or American Institute of Architects, standards. Okay, let's hit continue. Start on the Lines tab. You're going to see we basically changed the exact same things for the Mech one, just a couple different settings. Remember, what did we change on the Lines tab? The dim exe variable, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's again the same. You should have an 1/8 inch. So 0.125. By the way, don't type 1/8. You can use the up down arrow. It's better. It's easier just to type decimal. So the dim exe variable goes to an 1/8. That's all we change here. Go to the Symbols and Arrow tab. Here we do want to change dim block 1 and dim block 2 to an architectural tech. Okay. We don't care about dim leader block, we're not going to use it. Dim ASD, or dim arrow size, needs to be an 8. Very rarely do you have centers on architectural, so set the dim send to none. That should be all we need there. Go to the text tab. The dim text style variable, it's dim txsty, needs to be Arch 1, right? 1/8 inch high text. Down under the dim gap variable, we want that half our letter height again, so a 16, 0625. Now, one thing I want to pay attention to here, and I'll point this out, is dim gap is in 2 places. It's right here, draw a frame around the text, that's for a basic dimension. It's also down here, that's part of dim gap. If you do a dim gap value of 0, then it draws the frame around it. But they broke it into 2 buttons, so you can go positive here and then that. We do use aligned dimension style. Okay. So over on text alignment, this is really a combination of a couple variables, but if you just click aligned, that will line them up. Stop me if you fall behind.
Are we supposed to remember all of these settings?
Not really. We'll set it up and it's going to be there, so you'll be done. Under the Fit tab, again, set dim text. And these are identical to the Mech 1 dimension style, except for 2 things. The dim later blocks, we're going to terminate our dimension lines different. By the way, you can use your custom arrowhead if you don't want to use an architectural tech. Okay, because I said you can use it for anything the rest of this semester. Okay, you can do that. Or, and the only other thing we do is we do an aligned. That's it, everything else is identical. Dim text, if you don't have your dim anno right here, click that. Let's go to primary units. So, dim L unit is at the top. I guess there is a couple other changes. We're not decimal here. We are architectural for a dim L unit. Dim deck set to a 16. And mine already is defaulted to it. I don't know if yours did. We don't use dim zen really with this, except for the fact, go down, notice that your leading and trailing zeros are no longer available since it's going to use a foot-inch system. We may suppress feet. You never suppress inches. Okay? So by that, what's that mean? If I get a dimension that's less than 1 foot, okay, it can say 9 inches. Okay, so I'm suppressing feet, right? It doesn't read 0 feet, 9 inches. But if I have an even foot mark, like 2 foot dash 0 inches, I have to have that. Okay, so I do not suppress that. If you clicked on suppress inches, it would just say 2 foot there. Okay, that is too close with 1 single dash and 2 single dashes to people making a mistake, 2 inches versus 2 feet. Okay, so we always have inches.
If you don't suppress feet, will it say 0 feet and inches?
Yes, it will.
So you typically suppress it then?
Yeah, that's the standard.
So-
All right, so you're done?
Wait,
I'm sorry.
so I'm clicking feet, right? Zero suppression. Why are you going to- I
I
clicked inches, I thought you just said nine.
I was talking at the same time.
Okay.
Probably chewing gum here too. That's, yeah, you want to suppress
That's
feet.
why I was like, okay.
Too
Not inches,
much.
sorry.
Alright.
Hey, that's good, we're good on that. Okay, just say okay. Close. Let's just throw a quick dimension out, make sure it looks good. Okay, so you should have something that looks like this. You might want to try a real small dimension that's less than a foot, just to make sure that that is reading correctly also. These will be fairly large because if you'll notice down on the annotation scale, since these are annotated, they're at a 1/4 inch, so they've been blown up 48 times.
How come mine, the text isn't, it's right inside all this?
It's because we got dim text on. Always keep the text inside. Just use your grip, pull it out.
And we keep. Okay, well.
Yeah, when you get
Why
to
do you
around,
have to do that?
when you get to around 6 inches, okay, that's when you're gonna find that these will work for you. Okay, where you can, yeah, not at this scale. Maybe get, foot 2.
How do you close?
Okay, but it's right, it didn't have the 0 on there.
Mine still has a 0.
Then you need to go change your dims in variable.
I did.
Mine always is double. One, zip.
All right, now last thing to really kind of check here. Oh, we don't have a multi-liter, so let's set one of those up. So go into MLS if you would. Now these are, multi-liters are pretty much identical. So if you want to use the design center, you can just grab it, your mechanical ones, pull in that and your spline one, in case you need the spline. If not, let's just create one and check it. So I'm going to say new. There is one problem with pulling it in, is that our mechanical ones use the CSI1 text, which is a simplex font. So we may just want to set it up. So I'm just going to call it Arch 1 again, make it annotative, continue. Under leader format, you're just changing the size on this to an 1/8 inch for the arrowhead. On the leader structure tab, the landing again goes to an 1/8 inch. On the content tab, for your text style, you want your arch 1. And down under your attachments, they should probably both read middle of top line. Your landing gap is half your letter height, 0.0625. And take off the tick mark that's extend leader to text. So we set it up identical to mechanical, except that it has the arch 1 text style. Again, you're probably going to want to place one real quick. These are pretty much the same. I must not have my arch 1 text style on this
See,
computer.
I don't have it.
No, because your text is totally different.
Yeah, mine's still using syntax.
Yeah, I was saying, mine looks doubled.
I'll get mine updated for Monday.
There's no arrow, we use ticks.
We use arrows
I don't have an arrow.
for your multi-leader.
Oh.
I don't have an arrow.
If you make it really small, it won't draw the
That's-
arrow.
oh, it's not.
You should see your art style dot text on there. Do you guys see your architectural text?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hey, this computer hasn't been updated for that. It prints well though. It looks kind of weird on the
Does it
screen where it's
double?
got the extra lines on it.
Yeah.
Now that computers have got so much memory in today's world, if you wish, there are a couple other architectural fonts out there. Country Blueprint's one of my favorites. There's City Blueprint, that's an architectural
Yeah,
one.
I like
They
City.
do require substantially more memory. So if you're working off of a laptop or something, I would stick with a SHX font. But certainly on these PCs, if you wanted to use something like City or Country Blueprint, there are a lot of firms that use those. All right, last thing, let's go to paper space on this thing. You do have a title block that's all set up for you. Make sure your name's in it. Make sure the date's corrected. We are doing one sheet, so down on the bottom, it should say 1 of 1 sheets. Come up to the next one. Yeah, CSI drafting. The date, it's not Christmas.
Close enough.
Put your name in.
I don't have any of that.
Your name.
Did you open the right file?
One that had the toilet and all that stuff on it.
Both of them do.
Yeah, there was one
Okay,
that-
go down to the bottom where it says floor plan, where by your model space.
There you are. Oh, I was in the wrong one. I was in the wrong toilet.
Now scale, you're gonna leave scale as noted, folks, because we're, we're gonna have 3 different scales on this. And I think everything else is pretty much the same. This is kind of a real generic type of architectural title block. It's set to a D sheet, so it will print to a 36 by 24. We're going to end up using multiple viewports on here to display our items. All right, I'll get into this more on Monday, but let me just real quickly, the first step you want to do on this drawing is to come in and do the floor plan. Don't even worry about your X-res at this point. I would like you to draw this. Now, there are some notes on the bottom to help you draw it. Okay, first off, don't even worry about dimensioning this till the end, or text. Okay, just draw it first. Remember, we do not have to know scale or anything until we are getting ready to annotate the drawing. So you can draw everything. Ultimate scale is going to be 1/4 inch to a foot. Do not draw the stairs. Move the kitchen, stove, fridge, etc. So in essence, you're not going to draw this. We're not going to put the basement on this. We're going to take these items, slide them down to that wall. Okay? So we're going to make the kitchen a little bigger. That's the first thing. The next thing, I can't read that.
All dimensions given are interior dimensions.
Slide this up so I can see this. So when you're getting your sizes, all dimensions are interiors. So when I'm getting ready to draw the garage, it's 23 by 23. That's the dimension from the inside of this wall to the inside of this wall. Inside of that wall to the inside of this wall. When I'm looking at the width of this object, then I'm going to take width is given first, height second. So it's 26 from this wall, it's 26 plus 16 plus 22 to that wall. Okay? And then just add these up, you got 14 and 13 for the overall height here. So interior dimensions are given. Draw your walls at this size. So exterior walls have 6 inches. And that is from the inside to the outside. So I would draw my insides and then just offset everything 6 inches, and you're good for that. This wall around the garage right here is considered an exterior wall, even though it's shared between the house and the garage. Okay. In essence, it's a 2 by 6 wall.
And you don't double walls.
What's that?
You wouldn't double walls, it'd just be 1 6-inch wall.
That's correct.
Okay.
1 6-inch wall. Your interior walls, you draw at 4.5 inches. So that's this one, these guys right here, and this one. That's it, right? Draw those at 4.5.
Where do these people sleep?
I'm sorry?
Where do these people sleep?
They used to
In the garage.
Well, in the basement. That we're not doing.
They used to leave the basement.
Okay? They're like me. They sleep in the doghouse.
Oh.
All right. Last note. Estimate all dimensions not given. Okay. So again, I'm not going to hold you to the fact